Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending upon the time of day for you. Thank you for taking the time to spend a few minutes with me. I hope you find the experience entertaining as well as educational. Before I begin, let me tell you a little about myself. Now, when I give speeches, this part is usually done by someone else who introduces me. So you'll pardon me if this sounds a bit pretentious, but my advisors have told me this is what I should say. My name is John Fall. I'm a speaker, seminar workshop facilitator, and senior global executive management leadership consultant. I have over 4 decades of experience with organizations ranging in size from a few hundred employees to hundreds of thousands worldwide. My clients include Honda, Toyota, General Motors, the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, Royal Dutch Shell, Australian Teleservices Association, IBM, Lockheed Martin, ESI International, Computer Task Group, and numerous small and mid-size enterprises. My industry experience is extensive. It includes automotive, financial services, oil and gas, healthcare, employee mortgage banking, manufacturing, distribution, construction, real estate, insurance, and others. My consulting engagements, which were predominantly initiated by client referrals, have taken me throughout North America and Asia Pacific, including Australia, Japan, the Philippines, and Singapore. And they've involved vendor negotiations and management of client employees, consultants, and offshore resources. I'm a certified project management professional, former director of the Orange County, California, U.S. chapter of the Independent Computer Consultants Association, author of Using Information as a Resource, published in American in Mortgage Banking magazine, as well as Living with a Fast Idiot, the Executive's Guide to Computers, used by Arthur Andersen and Company's introductory course on computers. I created and conducted a seminar workshop, How to Select and Install Information Technology, a Management Perspective, for the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans Automation Institute in Palm Springs, California in the U.S., and a workshop entitled How to Implement an E-Strategy for the Australian Teleservices Association in Sydney, Australia. It delivered real-life strategies and the pitfalls of E-Strategy implementation for the organization whose members are contact center managers and team members. That workshop included web integration techniques and department organization strategies. I also developed and addressed a speech to high school students titled, What's Your Dream? At the De La Salle College of St. Benil, Choose IT, Discover and Learn Your Future conference in Manila in the Philippines. I'm listed in Who's Who in the World, Who's Who in America, Who's Who in Finance and Industry, Who's Who in Finance and Business, Who's Who in Emerging Leaders in America, as well as Who's Who in the West. This speech is part of what I call Fall's Inspirational Kickoff Speeches. It's a collection of 5 short, inspirational speeches designed to kick off an annual planning meeting, team building event, corporate reorganization introduction, or any meeting that could use a refreshing start. This speech is called the Mirror Test. The other speeches in the collection are, Do you know who you are? It's not about you. You don't have to be famous, and it's never too late. Do you still blame other people and circumstances for why you can't accomplish what you want to in life? It's a pretty common failing for young folks, blaming everyone and everything but themselves. But most people outgrow this and learn to look long and hard at themselves to discover what they can and can't do. And while it's nice to work on improving what you can't do, Most modern management principles tell you to focus on what you can do and keep doing it until you're an expert. I've worked with people in all walks of life, including senior executives of Fortune 500 global enterprises, and every one of them who is successful has a good understanding of their strengths and weaknesses. But the title of this speech isn't based on executives. It's based upon conversations with my sons. Now, my brother raised a boy and a girl. He tells me it's really different when you raise a girl. Now, I don't have first-hand experience because we raised 3 boys. And there was a time in the life of each of them that they were blaming everyone but themselves for what was happening to them. Quite frankly, I find it hard to believe that part of life is any different for girls. So whether you're raising boys or girls, I think you'll find you can use what I am about to share with you. I use different methods of trying to reach and teach my sons, but finally came up with what proved to be most effective. I'd let them rant and rave about how life wasn't fair until they talked themselves out. Then I told them they were looking in the wrong place. I told them they needed to look in the mirror instead. Because if they looked long enough and thought about it hard enough, they'd soon realize that the key to their future didn't lie outside themselves, but the responsibility was squarely on their shoulders for the kind of life they wanted to lead. I told them to take a good long and hard look at what they were able to do and what they weren't able to do, then to concentrate on improving what they couldn't yet do and building on what they could do. It became known in our family as the mirror test. And even though the boys are now young men, they still often tell me, "I know, Dad, it's time to look in the mirror." As you think about this, here's some ideas for you that might help you realize your own dreams. First, learn to look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what part of my life that's not working am I responsible for? Second, now ask yourself, what am I going to do about it? And immediately begin to develop a concrete plan to get you to where you want to be in life. Start by writing down ideas just as they come to you. Then, after you've written down all the ideas, put them in priority order with a date when you expect to achieve each goal. Also ask yourself, who am I going to pick as my mentor? Who can help me as I chart my future? It may be a family member, a good friend, or someone you work with. 4. Go seek out the person you picked as a mentor and make it official. And finally, share your plans with your mentor and continue to refine and execute them. With this in mind, let me give you an example of someone who had every reason to blame circumstances for why she couldn't do things in life, but decided to overcome what appeared to be overwhelming odds. And later I'll share a story with you about my wife called "You Can't Learn How to Be Taller." I'm sure you'll enjoy it as well as learn some lessons from it. I first heard about Wilma Rudolph decades ago in a speech by the great religious leader, author, and speaker in the U.S., Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. He's perhaps best known for his book, The Power of Positive Thinking. Her story has remained with me ever since I heard it. I've since heard more about her life from Juju Chang in a story she did for ABC News, and Steve Ember and Barbara Klein from The Voice of America. So I give these famous people credit for some of the words I'm about to tell you about Wilma Rudolph. I've always found hers to be an inspiring story, and I think you will too. Wilma Rudolph was born prematurely at 2 kilos, about 4.5 pounds, the 20th of 22 siblings. Her father, Ed, was a railway porter, and her mother, Blanche, was a maid. So much for the myth that you have to be born lucky to get anywhere in life. She had many illnesses when she was very young, including pneumonia and scarlet fever. She also had infantile paralysis caused by the polio virus at age 4, and she wore a brace on her left leg and foot, which had become twisted as a result, until she was 9. Later in her life, Wilma said, "My doctors told me I would never walk again. My mother told me I would. I believe my mother." Remember my recommendation earlier that you find yourself a mentor? Even with her natural talent, one of the things that molded Wilma Rudolph's life was when she found Ed Temple, who coached the track team of runners at Tennessee State University in the U.S. During Temple's storied 44-year career, he coached 40 Olympians, including Rudolph. "You gotta realize this too," he said. "You can't make a racehorse out of a mule. See, you gotta have some racehorse in you." She worked hard, no doubt about it, and she had that burning desire. Temple said it took a while for Rudolph to run into the spotlight. When she won her first Olympic gold in 1960 in the 100-meter dash, Temple was confused at the news. "I heard the crowd roar and everything, and then somebody ran over and said, 'Wilma won.' I said, 'Won what?' Temple said." He was especially caught off guard because earlier Rudolph had sprained her ankle, but that didn't stop her from winning her first gold in the 100-meter dash, her second in the 200-meter dash, or her third in the 4x100-meter relay. The race started out rough. Rudolph fumbled with the baton and fell behind. But then she took off. "The first 75 yards, I think, is the fastest I've ever seen anybody run." She caught them all at 75 yards. So Rudolph, the girl who was told she'd never walk again, became the fastest woman in the world with the help of Temple. We were all in tears at that time, and the greatest thrill about the relay team is that I was able to be with 3 people who I had really worked with for years, and the 4 of us crowding on that one step to receive our gold medal, she said after the win. An impressed President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, asked to meet her. He was so excited to meet Wilma because he's seen her run on television and everything, Temple said. We sat there and they talked 15-20 minutes. Over the years, she dazzled more than one U.S. president. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton called her a great one. Later in life, Rudolph became a teacher and inspired countless young people along the way before she died in 1994 at the early age of 54 of brain cancer. I think each one of you has within you the spirit of Wilma Rudolph, and I hope that hearing her story will inspire you to whatever greatness it is you want out of life. And now, before I finish, here's the story I promised you earlier. It's a story about my wife, Pilar, whose friends in the Philippines call her by her Filipino nickname, Nena. The story is titled, "You Can't Learn How to Be Taller," and it's taken from my book. And then there were stories, lessons from a lifetime of leadership, available on Amazon.com in print and electronic Kindle editions. One of the more rewarding but very difficult things we do as managers and senior managers is to place people in the right position. Hopefully, we also place them at the right time, not only for the organization but for themselves. We assess their ability to handle the new position, especially their ability to handle it when we're ready to give it to them. Over the years, there's a variety of psychological tests that have been devised to help with these decisions. But quite frankly, the tests are only partially successful. Not surprisingly, nothing replaces the experience and judgment of a seasoned executive. Sometimes we place people in the wrong position And when it doesn't work out, have ourselves to blame as much as the person we promote. I've been guilty of this, and so have many of my clients, and we've all tried to learn from the few times it has occurred. But the most important lesson I learned was from my wife. Like many folks from Asia, she's short. She stands just slightly over 5 feet tall, about 1.5 meters in her bare feet. To be honest, I don't often think about it. But one day I walked into our kitchen just in time to watch her pick up a long wooden spoon and use it to pull down some plastic bowls from the top cabinet in the kitchen. I stood there amazed when she turned around and said, "But I do this all the time. You've just never been here to see it before." Getting the step ladder is too much trouble, and until we retire in the Philippines and I have a maid to help, I had to devise a practical solution. It's why I put the plastic bowls and not the china and crystal on the top shelf. I've been able to overcome many shortcomings in my life, but I discovered very early that I would have to find a way to get around my height. I've done it by being aware and changing as much as I could, which includes putting the things I need the most in lower places and figuring out a way to get to the rest of the things that are beyond reach. You see, I learned how to spell and how to be polite. I learned how to read, write, speak several different languages, and I even learned how to paint watercolors to the point that I now call myself an artist. But there was no way for me to learn how to be taller. It just isn't possible. So I've made adjustments. That's what you do in life. It took a while before I really understood what she was telling me, but it's one of the most valuable lessons I've learned. Now, before I ask people to do things, I always make certain I'm not asking them to learn how to be taller. Thanks for letting me spend some time with you and to share my stories. If I left you learning for more, send me an email at jrfall@yahoo.com and I'll send you some information about the Leadership Insight series, a collection of 5 seminars based upon my book. And then there were stories, lessons from a lifetime of leadership. The book is available on Amazon.com in print and electronic Kindle editions. One of the seminars, What Can I Do?, includes the story behind the phrase, "What can I do?" A fascinating true story, Stupid Crook, and a story from Nordstrom, a high-end department store in the U.S., similar to Harrods in the UK, David Taylor in Australia, and Rustans in the Philippines, as well as the story I just told you about my wife. You can't learn how to be taller. The stories are interspersed with quotes from Dilbert and Ronald Reagan, 40th President of the United States. The other seminars include Leadership Myths and Musts, Leadership Lessons from Everyday Life, Leadership Lessons from Entrepreneurs, and The Pace of Leadership. Thanks again. I hope you enjoyed the stories and will not only learn some of the lessons yourself, but pass them on to your colleagues, because knowledge is one of the few things that increases when it's shared.